Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole, and we're coming to you today from RabbitHoleCentral here in Gramercy Park. And yesterday I had a show about Dr. Querci, and we were talking about the importance of going from fear to love. And even though he's a medical doctor, he says that you can heal people without medicine. And what was very alive with me was a person that I know right now that I'm taking to get ozone treatments. And it's sort of questionable, even though Otto Warburg got a Nobel Prize in 1931 for his discovery of the healing effects of ozone, it seems today there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. Yet I'm seeing how enormously beneficial it is. But I'm very intrigued about how you can heal beyond medicine, because I'm thinking that might be what the paradigm is, because we're also talking about relationships and the importance of the relationship between the doctor and the patient. Dr. Querci on my show had said that young doctors today don't even know what the doctor-patient relationship is like because they're so beholden to protocol and institutional learning, so that connection between the patient and what's really going on is broken. So I have on the line today Alan Steinfeld of New Realities and Philip Lipetz, who will be joining me and Molly here at RabbitHoleCentral. Molly's over there. So welcome, Philip, and welcome,
Hi.
Welcome, Alan.
Hi.
So Philip, do you have anything to say? Because you have a background in a Ph.D. in biophysics, which is very, heady scientific stuff. What about the doctor-patient relationship and the placebo effect? Because sometimes people feel better just because they went to the doctor. Is that scientifically valuable?
Listen, what's going on now is we have within us two different sets of instructions programming our brains. We have the biological instructions, and they let us eat and procreate and just take care of our environment. But then it turns out the brain is like a muscle. The more you exercise specific parts of it, the stronger it gets. That's called neuroplasticity. And it further turns out that modern media, television, movies, internet, computer games, all program the part of our mind that lets us interact more with the people around us. It specifically uses as part of the system called Mirror Neurons, but forget how it does it. What it does is it sets up an extended self so that when someone else acts around you, you not only feel empathy for them, but that you feel as if, your brain feels as if it's doing those same actions. If you watch a person reaching for a glass of water, your brain will actually start firing the circuits to reach for a glass of water. So this is getting stronger and stronger and stronger in people right now.
Can I ask you, Philip, what creates the mirroring? Is it that...
Alan, you got to back away from the phone. It's blaring.
That we put... Is it that... This is what I want to... Do we put ourselves in the position of that person? Or how are we feeling what that person is doing? What's the mechanism of that?
Okay, let me get to that in a sec here.
Okay.
And so it turns out that what we're doing is we are setting up an extended self so that when someone acts around us, we feel it's ourselves. And that is getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger in our society simply because modern media is exercising those circuits in our brain and making that stronger and stronger and stronger. It's reprogramming us. Now, the old paradigms of medicine are not set up to include that empathy. But everyone that watches television, goes to the movies and all that, has those circuits in their brain going very strongly so that they feel the absence when they get in the situation of modern doctors sitting there with no empathy, just treating you as a person, and not as a person, as an object. Now, to answer Alan's question, it turns out, and this was discovered in Italy, in Parma, Italy, in the mid-1980s, that we have within us circuits, specific cells called mirror neurons, individual cells that fire when someone else does something and creates empathy within us.
Wait, is it because we're looking at that person and that action, we're projecting ourselves over there, or is there a energetic resonance with the person?
Well, Alan, first of all, you've got horrible feedback on whatever speaker you're using.
Oh, okay, let me go like that.
It's really bad for the recording.
Okay, let me try it this way.
Stay like that.
Oh, it sounds better, Alan.
Much better.
Okay, so I'm saying, do you get the...
Of course, there's always an energetic component. But I'm just talking in terms of hard science now.
So someone is watching someone, and they are feeling that's them over there, and they are then feeling as if their body's going through the same motion as that person over there. Is this what you're saying?
Absolutely. That's why you like to go to movies. You go to movies and you feel empathy with what you're seeing on the screen. Someone suffers or someone is very powerful. I mean, you walk out of a James Bond movie, feel like, oh, I could conquer the world, right?
Right.
That's why we like to go there. Because these mirror neurons set up a circuit so that what we see is as if we are doing it ourselves.
Right.
And actually, to your brain, it is the same thing as if you are doing it yourself. There's no difference.
Huh.
And in terms of your experience, your life history, as it builds up internally within your human biocomputer, it all is determined by what you see, and to a lesser extent what you hear. There's both auditory and visual, but primarily visual. And it also is unique to human beings. Yes, there are mirror neurons in apes. Yes, there are mirror neurons in birds, but a much, 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 much lower concentration. What makes us unique is that we are programmed not only to cooperate with each other, but to feel empathy with each other, and that empathy really is the discovery, in some ways, of the soul. If you define the soul to be the part of the human consciousness that lies outside of the boundaries of your body, then the mirror neuron system is the gateway to the soul, because what's happening externally changes the programming in your brain, and what they're doing with their brain is reflected in your brain. So it's an extended self, the soul, if you will. Science is actually not on the verge of, has started to enter into what does it mean to be an extended self? What does the soul really mean? They've discovered this. The problem with the healing modalities that we have now is that you've got people coming up to you who expect to interact with people on the basis of the extended self, and instead they get something that appeals only to the biological brain, only to the logical part, and that cuts them off from their experience. As a result of that, when you interact with doctors, it is completely different than your interactions with other people, where you've got the mirroring going on, you've got the empathy going on, and that cuts you off from your internal belief systems, that it'll work.
Hey, excuse me, Philip, you're saying your internal belief system gets cut off because of the authority of the doctor, backed up by the power of the society and the pharmaceuticals, so that when you look at a study and it shows side effects that are really deadly, the doctor, I believe the doctors themselves are also sort of swept up in this powerful, I don't know what to call it, illusion, that generates an empathy, a type of empathy. Everyone wants to empathize with the powerful force that they feel they will need to get their healing, even though it flies in the face of what the evidence is.
Well, what people want that, but the doctors are cutting that off. And so what the doctors are doing is they are purposely trying to cut the feelings of empathy, the feelings of sympathy between them and the patients. They're taught to do that in medical school. I was a professor in a medical school. I know exactly what they're taught.
Why?
Well, part of it so that you can survive when your patients die, or that you make a mistake, or any of that.
Okay.
It's, a survival mechanism that doctors develop. The problem is that survival mechanism is based upon the idea that just doing the right thing, delivering the right pill. Now, a lot of people don't believe they're delivering the right pill. But even if you are delivering the right pill, if you just hand it over in a way that doesn't work with the empathetic systems, then it doesn't resonate with our brains that have been programmed via neuroplasticity and the influence of movies, television, internet, and computer games, and all that sort of thing, been programmed to operate with a sense of extended self.
So you're telling me that
Empathy.
So you're telling me that placebo is something that's actually very important to the healing process.
Yeah, I'm telling you placebo is, and I'm telling you what doctors are doing is they're actually cutting themselves off from any placebo effect, any effect based upon the power of the brain to believe and to cooperate and to feel empathy with the person that is trying to heal them. If the brain doesn't feel that, then it doesn't feel satisfied, and the internal healing mechanisms are cut off.
So, Alan, can you... there's some noise there, Alan, so don't...
What I'm getting from Philip... Okay, I got it. I was just putting that on speaker. So what I'm getting from you is this... So the soul level is because it's the empathy we have with each other to create a collective unconscious, right? I mean, it's sort of part of the group soul.
I'm not even sure if I'd call it a collective unconscious. I'd call it a collective conscious.
Okay, collective conscious. And then, so the doctors are denying a big aspect of healing by denying...
Absolutely, and they're being trained to do that because they view the brain as a computer, a little hunk of cells, 100 billion cells that all interact to create a biocomputer, and that's fine. But what they don't realize is that each of our human biocomputers is totally networked to the other biocomputers around us. They're operating in a huge Wi-Fi net.
Right.
It's constantly changing and interacting, and that really defines the level of our consciousness. Is the consciousness of your computer confined to your computer when you're on your internet, or is it all the different computers that you are linked to that defines what's the power that's coming into your screen at that moment? It's obviously the network. It's the same thing with our experience. It's the network of human biocomputers that we are linked to that is so vital. And doctors are cutting that off.
But this has always been true. I mean, why are you saying it's more true now than ever before, since we've always had pretty much the same...
Alan, are you speaking into the speaker?
But Alan, this is the most important... You asked the best possible question.
Well, thank you. That's why I'm here. Okay.
Listen, before this, our experience was pretty limited. We had a few people we interacted with. That was it. We didn't have a huge network. We weren't set up to network. It's said that a Sunday New York Times has within it more information than even the most educated person had in the 1500s.
Right.
Okay. So we are exposed to this huge flow of information. Everyone knows that. But we're also exposed to a huge flow of images of people and numbers of people. We're mobile. We move through society. We live in these cities with millions and millions and millions and millions of people floating around. We see them when we go walking. We turn on the television and we see all of these different images that we empathize with. We play a computer game and we enter into an alternative reality. We go on the internet. We see all this. Now, what this does is exercises the part of the human brain that is designed to create networking between people. And that's the basis of our entertainment right now, is that networking. But because the human brain is plastic, it's called neuroplasticity, the more you exercise a brain circuit, the stronger that circuit becomes, and in fact, the more cells become dedicated to that circuit. So as a result of modern media, a potential that's been hidden in the human brain and making it strong.
That's
making
good.
it so strong it's becoming predominant.
Yeah.
It wasn't ever there before, but it's there now in the last 20, 30 years just because electronic media is exercising our brain in a different way and creating a different form of human consciousness.
Okay, now here's the challenge, and here's the part, Philip, that's so heartbreaking to me. When I was talking to Dr. Querci, he was saying that patients come and they already know what the diagnosis is. They know what the treatment is. And I said, well, how do they know that? And he said, because they're looking at the internet. So it seems as though this is something that's challenging that part of the doctor's role that he needs. He needs a certain amount of authority, and yet it's taken away by... Hello? Philip? Philip?
Yeah, well, what's going on is that the doctors rely... The whole medical profession evolved when the human brain was different. When the human brain was authority-based. Someone else told you. It wasn't a two-way conversation. It was a one-way conversation. If you are networked with a person, then it is a two-way conversation. That's why now patients go in and say, oh, this is what I've got, and they try to have a dialogue with the doctor because they view the doctor as an extension of their consciousness.
And meanwhile, the doctor's got some stuff running where he's terrified to go against AMA protocols. So Querci says that he wants to bring...
That's only part of it. What is going on is that doctors are trained that they are not to engage in a dialogue with their people. They are trained to give the truth one way. Now, that maybe the truth is the AMA defines it, and maybe the truth is some other alternative medical society defines it. It doesn't matter. It's a one-way conversation.
Or maybe, Philip, it's like what you said, it's fear of death. They don't want to get too close to a patient that's going to die, and then they'll feel bad. Maybe it's emotional protection.
And it's also their training. They are trained. You've got to understand that form of human interaction was appropriate in the old days when human brains were not networked to the degree that they're networked now.
But on the other hand, Philip, I think authority is important because I don't have the time to go to medical school, but when I've got a problem, I'm sick, then I'm less likely to be able to think and go through studies and figure out my medication. We very much need doctors and people who are dedicated to this study. How can we heal the doctors of what you're talking about, that the internet is kind of attacking them, patients are coming in already knowing what they want, and then if they can't get it, then they blame the doctors. How do we heal the people who are healing the people? Because Querci said doctors are terrified.
What people have to realize is that human consciousness is now networked. A great change in paradigm has taken place in the last 30 years. A huge change in paradigms has taken place in the last 30 years, and that what you're talking about in terms of how doctors interact with patients is just one of the many, 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 many things that will change because a network mind refuses to act as if there is only desktop applications.
It's a very painful process, Philip.
Oh, it totally is. But you have to see it's going on all throughout society. It is one of the most important trends going on right now, and people don't recognize what's going on.
Right.
I call it our soul mind. Soul because it's the extended self. Mind because they're all pulled together. And it's not my soul mind because that implies I'm separate. The R is the only thing that exists in that world. Yeah, you and me, inseparable. Because that is the way our brain is getting changed.
So,
there's genetic evolution, and there's epigenetic evolution, which is how you express the different potentials. Turns out that within the DNA programming of any cell, there is many more potentials that are expressed at any one time. So you have to rely upon the environment to say what form of expression takes place. That's epigenetic expression. It turns out you can evolve both in terms of the DNA and in terms of the epigenetic expression. Well, the ultimate expression of epigenetic expression is what's going on right now with our human consciousness in terms of this potential that's always been there. It's what makes humans cooperate. Listen, babies are born, and we take care of them, we love them, and what are they? They're slobbering little creatures that shit and make horrible sounds and don't really cooperate in the way we like. So why do we take care of them? Because they totally tap into our mirror neuron system, and we feel completely empathetic with them. They know how to tap into that system.
What about biological fact that...
Alan, speak into the speaker thing, not okay?
But what about the biological fact that animals, when you take a baby away from its mother, they did this in rabbits, and they do something to the baby, the mother feels it on a cellular level. What about those experiments? Can you include that?
I am just talking about how we program babies to learn and how babies program us to take care of them. That's a network. It's a two-way communication going on all the time. And we're programmed to do that. It's part of the reason that humans have evolved. Listen, what is it that makes us so unique? Well, yeah, we're smart, but it's our society. I can't build a transistor, but I sure can use devices that have transistors and integrated circuit systems. Our society, our network of people gives each person more power than they would have individually. Up until this time, it's been a whole thing of, well, a few people will give power down to other people, and they'll be elevated up above everybody. But now, because of modern media, the networking has become so pervasive, both in terms of the internet level, in terms of the news communication and the entertainment level, and in terms of how human minds are networked together because of these epigenetic changes in the gene expression of the human mind to create these networks of empathy.
Say, Alan, how can Alan?
In this case, the network is becoming multiple directions. Think of the evolution that's going on right now as what happened in the computer field. In the computer, it all started out, and we're going to give you these brains, and you're going to use them. And, oh, yeah, we're going to give you the potential to use word processing, and it's on your application. And we're going to give you the potential to use, whatever, presentation software. There it is. It's on your desktop. So it's all, I'm giving this to you, and it's downloaded. But now, that's all changing. The power isn't in the individual computer. It's in the computer cloud. It's on the internet. You want to do something, you can do it with a program that's located on another computer elsewhere. And it's actually more powerful than doing it on your computer.
But Philip, I don't want to burst your cloud here. People are controlling search engine traffic. There's no question about it. I see communities start to build up knowledge and it gets burst through. You know what I'm saying? Videos get taken down. We don't know who YouTube is, who Google.
What you're looking at is people trying to control a change in paradigm that's taking place. The more that we recognize this change in paradigm, the more we can overcome these individual people trying to control the energy flow and make it back the other way.
But
and what you're also looking at is an auto default, Paula.
Alan, off the speaker.
It's an auto-abused...
Alan, you got to get off the speaker. You're ruining... Okay.
...factor that the system attacks itself, and that's what we have to get beyond that thinking also.
Yeah, but what the autoimmune factors, if you want to use that metaphor, is essentially when it recognizes something as foreign, it attacks it. We have to change our concept, our recognition of what is foreign, to include our network of minds. Because your consciousness isn't defined as just Alan. It's Alan and Paula and Molly and Philip right now.
Right. Right. No, I get that. I get that.
And so this is requiring a whole new way of thinking.
Yes. And so what is the new way? What is new reality?
Alan, the purveyor of new realities and new reality TV, I thank you for that's actually what's going on right now. It's this new reality. And it turns out, I'm actually doing a movie on this, it turns out that there are ways that you can evoke this system in people and use this system. And that the more people start to take control of the networking of their minds and start to create networking consciously rather than having it happen subconsciously, the more that they will control the network rather than some people using old paradigms will have the ability to control the network. And that's the answer to your question, Paula, on how we get around external controls over these networks of consciousness.
I don't know if I agree if it's just a few people doing it. It just seems to be this phenomenon that comes in of sort of fraud and maybe a short-term gain by somebody who has power, and he's not understanding that he's connected to everyone else. In other words, if you're holding back medical treatments that are going to help people more cheaply, then what that means is you're going to participate in a sicker society because for a moment you had the power to make that decision. And you made the wrong one.
Here's the problem. You can fight infinite battles on individual symptoms, but you have to, if you really want to change everything, you have to attack the root of the problem, what the real disease is, rather than what the symptoms are.
Right. So if you find vast power within, then it seems as though you're going to find the problem within too. And you're going to have to tackle your own human nature.
No. Human nature is good. Human nature is great. This whole idea that human nature is somehow flawed is not accurate. It is based upon a few people imposing will on other people and overcoming our natural tendency to live in expanded consciousness. We feel miserable when people refuse to let our consciousness expand out through the network. We feel powerless when people confine us only to our body rather than letting us have an extended sense of power. That is where depression comes from. That's where suffering comes from. And the people who make money, and a lot of people make money off of essentially selling that vision that you're powerless and you have to rely on them.
Except it's our choice to allow that to happen, to be powerless.
No, it is not our choice, because we haven't educated people as to the great potential that's being unleashed within their brains right now. The reason that you are reacting against this now, and people like you are reacting against this now in a much stronger way than anybody ever did before in history, is that you feel the power of the network, and subconsciously you feel that all of these things are wrong. I've seen you go from issue to issue to issue, and they're all interesting issues, but they're all reflecting your feeling of there's a greater truth out there that's contained when you get people together and talking. And I've seen you try to bring people together. That's one of the things you do, Paula. That's one of your great strengths. And so what you're doing is you're subconsciously recognizing that there's two truths. There's the truth based upon a world full of individual computers, and there's a truth based upon ever-shifting networks of human biocomputers. And you live in thousands of different networks, but they all within your brain are as if it's happening within your brain, not just not something external. You're internalizing what it is you see around you all the time and recognizing that you have more power than you're allowed to use, more power than society is set up to allow us to use.
And I also feel people have that power too, all the people.
Absolutely. Every single person has that power. We just haven't taught them how to use it. And that's what we have to do.
But Philip, when I'm really honest and I really reflect on, why I behave the way I do, I've thought it through and I've meditated and I've felt the heartbreak, because like right now I'm seeing studies, I've seen therapies that just help people so quickly, and I see the very medicine that they're taking from people they're trusting, who I also feel empathy with, by the way. I'm very, very concerned about the souls of the doctors, for whatever reason, why they're not acting on this. And I'm thinking it's got to be that I've been blessed by some very powerful people. I couldn't have figured this out by myself. I couldn't have drawn the energy by myself. It had to come from somewhere.
You have the network behind you, Paula.
But the network itself is a lot of ignorance.
No, the network is not a lot of ignorance. The big nodes on the network that are trying to say, me, that's an ignorant viewpoint based upon an antiquated view of what human consciousness is.
But I can be just as me as the next guy.
What Alan is saying is that the network of interactions has created a new reality, and that power is flowing through all of us.
But Alan, remember when you were asking me, would I take responsibility for this person's healing? Remember you said that?
Yeah, but that's individual. You're working on behalf of the network, whether you know it or not.
No, I understand that, but I kind of want to get back to that point, because there's a sort of an aversion to taking responsibility yourself when there's institutions that you grew up believing would take care of it, so you wouldn't have to do this enormous job. You can't do it by yourself, and yet you see the institutions are failing.
Yeah, but everything's changing according to Philip, and he's right.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is changing, and this whole idea of individual responsibility, is a way of saying you're isolated. No, it's not that you don't have responsibility. You do have interactions with people. If you see, people cannot act against other people if they feel the empathy that really exists there.
Right.
We only act in these bad ways because we're not recognizing the power of the network, both to give us information and the empathetic viewpoint. When you recognize the advantage, not just in terms of empathy, that's sort of a hairy-fairy term, but in terms of the information it gives you, the sense of power it gives you, the ability to accomplish more things in the world. In fact, when people feel empathetic for you, they spontaneously do the right thing for you. And so your world becomes filled with spontaneous miracles.
And you'll do...
That's what the reality we are moving into now, and this is based upon hard science. Now, everything you're talking about is taught in a paradox, Paula. You're analyzing the problem, saying, yes, there's a problem here, and you're coming up with real problems, but then you're trying to solve them in terms of the old paradigm. You can't, because these problems are a result of the conflict between the old paradigm and the new paradigm, and you can only find the answer within the new paradigm of the network reality. The new reality, as Alan would say it.
Thank you. But go back to Philip. How can we learn this skill?
Alan, please, on the speaker.
Well, no, it was good.
Much better.
Just go back, Philip, to how can people learn this? You're saying people don't know how to learn it. How can they learn this?
Exactly. That's what I wanted. That's what my new book and movie is all about. Why do I have to do a movie? Because it's a visual system. And if it's a visual system, you can only teach people how to do that visually. And so that's why I'm doing a movie on all of this. But well, yes, there are simple tricks. I can teach people in one day how to evoke this.
Well, tell us a little.
Minutes, I can teach you how to evoke this in other people.
Give us something.
Go on.
Give us something.
Alan, you've got to end the speaker. You're just ruining the recording.
All right, I'm just saying that I have to go back and forth.
Well, don't go back and forth. Just keep it on your ear.
Hello? Just
Great.
Give us a little sample so we know what you're talking about, okay, Philip?
Okay, I'll give you one little example. All the world loves a lover. You've heard that expression a million times. Turns out that lovers have a particular empathetic state that they project in terms of their facial expressions that makes everybody feel empathetic with them, not just the people around them. And if you know how to, and that means a couple of things. One, it means you have the ability to turn that network on in everybody around you, because you do it when you're in love. And two, if you discover what that signal is, that you are programmed to receive and enter into the network of anyone you see it. That's why the whole world loves the lover. You see someone who's putting out that signal, you go, oh, I love them too. If you use that signal, then you have the ability to create networks around you. Turns out that saints, great actors, babies, lovers, and happy people share the same visual signal.
Is the mirror neurons really a mimicking of facial expressions that we first take on from our mother, and then the child starts to identify with?
No, they actually no. It is a system. When you see something, it actually makes your brain fire the same motor neurons as if you were performing the same actions.
Because of what are they seeing? They're seeing a body in a certain position.
Well, this was originally discovered by some Italian scientists when they had an electrode stuck into a brain of a monkey, and the monkey is sitting there and it's doing nothing. And they previously had been testing the monkey, and whenever it reached for a peanut, you'd hear the firing of that neuron. And so they were sitting there. The monkey wasn't doing anything. It wasn't reaching for anything. And then one of the human people reached for the peanut. And all of a sudden they heard as if the monkey were reaching for the peanut. The brain didn't tell the difference between the monkey itself reaching for the peanut and the other person reaching for the peanut. It was totally the same thing to the internal brain. So they started doing studies on this, and of course then they had to figure out how to measure this in human beings without sticking electrodes in their brain. And they discovered functional MRI studies and stuff like that. And they discovered how to turn this on and how to turn this off in people. There's one best-selling book that was about this, but it hasn't discussed the real implications of it. It's just about, oh, gee, we made this discovery. It's called Mirroring People. It was the bestseller last year.
So we are extended into the environment through what we see and projected onto people, right? Is that what you say?
Exactly. Not only that, our brains are so linked that what happens in their brain changes what happens in our brain. We get the benefit of it and so forth.
Yeah, but how are they linked? How are the brain linked?
Through our visual system and our auditory system.
So that's yantra and mantra.
Exactly.
I guess that's why porno is so effective, isn't it?
That is exactly why porno is effective.
Oh, Alan, you just ruined a beautiful moment.
No, but that's why porno works. And that's why porno has become so prevalent in today's society, because we are programmed, we have stronger mirror neuron systems because we exercise them all the time. Therefore, we get more of a feeling that we're doing it when we watch someone else doing it in porn.
Now, let's see if you can make this leap. I think this is also why Feng Shui and Vastu works.
Well,
because we're extended into the... What?
Yeah, I can't make that leap based upon science, because of course Feng Shui and Vastu people say it's based upon the flow of the omens. But what I can say is that the saints are one group of people who've discovered how to use this system.
Of yantra and mantra, or visual and audio?
The mirror neuron system, the network system. The reason they've discovered this is, listen, remember I told you earlier in our discussion that babies are all born with this system, and that's how they get us to serve them.
Okay.
That's how they learn from us, by networking with us, using this system and being able to turn it on. That means we all have the infant brain within us, but then we sort of forget it, except when we're in love or when we are really happy. Well, what saints do is they say, oh, gee, we've got to turn off this adult brain that makes us think we're separate. So they spend years and years and years and years and years trying to figure out ways to turn off the adult brain. And what they're left with is the infant brain that they were born with, which is the mirror neuron networking system. Then they start working with that and using that, and that's why we all give money to saints. That's why we all think they're wonderful. That's why we all feel powerful when we're around them, because they know how to turn that system on, but they did it at a great price. Their price is that they turned off the normal adult system to reach this system. Wouldn't it be better to be out there in the world and have both the normal adult system and the infant system, have both the spiritual and the human systems working simultaneously? See, it's not necessary to turn off the adult brain to have the power of this networking. It's no longer necessary. It used to be necessary 2,000 years ago when people had no information passed out on. But now, because we live in this world of modern media, we have the neuroplasticity system. It has changed our mirror neuron system, made it so much stronger because it's exercised all the time, that to have the power of the network, we don't have to turn off the adult brain anymore. And this will produce a great revolution in spirituality, because the rules of spirituality were written 2,000 years ago, for 3,000 years ago, for people whose brains were functionally different because they were exercised in different ways. And so what worked for them is not necessarily the most efficient way for today's brain that has a greater capacity for networking. And isn't the goal of spirituality to get a sense of extended self? Well, you have a sense of extended self when you turn on that television, when you turn on that computer, when you go to that movie theater. Why do we like to go to movie theaters? We can watch the same thing on our little, LCD, or some people have big LCD TVs or whatever, our flat screen panel. Why do we like to go there? Because we'd like to be in the presence of other people who are experiencing the same thing. It gives us a greater sense of feeling. We network. We intuitively network when we are experiencing visual input that causes us to empathize. And we'd like to be in the presence of people when we do that. Well, spirituality hasn't recognized this new reality. It's still working by very valid rules, but valid rules that apply to human brains as they used to exist, not human brains as they exist now. Now, some people will say, oh, consciousness and, spirituality is the universal truth. Yes, it may be the universal truth, but your experience of that universal truth has to come through your organ of consciousness, which is your brain. And the way that you can experience one universal truth is different today than it is from anything that happened thousands and thousands of years ago when the Mahabharata took place, when Jesus was walking around. I'm not saying Jesus is invalid now, but I'm just saying the way people interacted was different. Maybe that's why they may have got it or not got it, what he had to say. Certainly there was opposition to him. Perhaps that was because the brains of the people who crucified him or whatever were completely different. Listen, our brains are completely different. So why do we think that something like spirituality, which is a study of consciousness, should work by the same rules that were devised for brains that are completely different? It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make a single bit of sense to me.
Molly, any thoughts?
Wait 1 second. spirituality based on...
Absolutely. Not only a revolution in spirituality, it's a revolution in consciousness. It'll change the way our society is organized, and it already is changing on the basis of this networks of human consciousness. But then it's going to be reflected at every point in society.
Including medicine, as Paula wants to point out.
Yeah, I mean, medicine, she keeps wanting to talk about medicine, and I'm saying you can't understand the individual issue until you understand